There we go. Looks like we're recording. How's it going, everybody? Well, thanks for joining me on this fine afternoon. It's a rather hot day in Portland, around 90 or so, hot for here. And I just thought I'd come out here and make a video about Dogma. You know, a couple times today I kind of wanted to tackle this and just didn't really have the, I guess, the moment or the gusto to go for it. It was like I wasn't at the right point in my day. And it got me thinking about pressure, the pressure to perform. And for me to be able to make a video when I want allows me to say if I don't want to make one, then I don't make it. It's not like I'm up in front of a group of people and I have to be functional at a particular time of the day. And there's a lot of pressure that goes along with that, with performance. And give you an example as a musician. I'm a musician, I love playing music, but if I was forced to perform a particular song or set at a certain time, music can become work. And art's the same way. If you paint or draw or write because you enjoy it, then you do. But if you try to make a profit off of it, the minute you do that, you've tied yourself down to profiting off of what you do best. Like, for example, for me, my art form, one of them is making videos, and I'd love nothing more than to be able to make a living doing this, but I'm not going to sit here and charge people for what I have to tell them. And I think that that ties in pretty well with what I wanted to talk about with Dogma here. And what I mean, in case you're not aware, I think most people at this point are aware of what Dogma is, but in case anyone out there is not, familiar with the definition, a dogma is a set of standards or rules to abide by within a particular group or paradigm. And it's mostly used within religion. So the dogma of Christianity may be you believe in the Ten Commandments, that you believe Jesus was the Son of God. The dogma in Catholicism, similar yet having completely different outlooks. I don't know all the principles and exact dogmas within these beliefs. But let's put it this way. If a new person was to come join a church, the dogma would be the components of that belief system that you have to believe in order to be considered a valid member. So this is going to be very subjective. Individuals are going to perceive it differently, and not everybody's going to think that anybody else really has all the right answers. And this is exactly what I'm trying to get across here. And part of the reason why, let's say that I don't charge to talk to people. If this became something I did for a living, then I would feel obligated to perform. The news, the media, this is what's happened to media. At one time, they were giving people information that they could utilize, and they were doing it because people wanted information. But then, we hit a wall, and we realized people aren't that interested in information. They're interested in gossip. And they want to know what horrible things have happened that day, but they want to hear it based on their own confirmation bias. So this is why in the 1980s the fairness doctrine for media was abolished, because the media were saying free speech is more important than us being non-biased. And, America agreed, and so the media became biased. And I think that this was important because it allowed us to wrap ourselves up in our own dogma. Because dogma extends so far beyond religion. It goes way into politics. The belief that if you're a conservative, let's say, then you have to believe in these certain standards. And, well, I'm a conservative, but I can't believe in global warming because all of the ones around me don't. Or I'm a liberal, but I can't believe that people should take care of themselves because everyone around me is telling me to help other people. And this can be very difficult to realize when we're doing it, when we are wrapped up in believing something. But all the bullshit aside, we can just sit down and say, why, if we believe something, then we have to ask ourselves, is this helping me to believe this? Is this a good thing to believe? Is it useful? And in many times it is. It's useful for a person to believe that they shouldn't kill another person, or that they shouldn't steal from another person. Those are things that help the individual and society. But when you assign that to a series of natural laws, or you try to ascribe it to being something that all humans have to abide by. There are very few rules that really all humans should live by, and even then they can be picked apart. An example would be, you should never kill another person. I think most people would agree that you should never kill another person. But if you were to put yourself in one of those wild situations where you had to kill someone else to protect your own family, and it wasn't in self-defense. For an I guess off the top of my head, an example would be if you had a neighbor and you lived, say 500 years ago, you lived in a small village and you had some neighbor who said, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to cut your family's throats in the middle of the night. I know that sounds harsh, but it's a pretty extreme example. And then he goes back home, and the father may sit there and think, I can go over and kill this person to preserve my family, or I can just hope for the best and hope that he doesn't harm anyone. And perhaps that's not the best situation. There are a lot of people who would say, well, hey, I'd put it in God's hands and whatever happens, happens. Well, I don't. I don't put anything in God's hands. I find that to be a cop-out in essence. We as humans have very limited influence over things that happen to us that are beyond our control. The matters of spirit, the matters of mind and consciousness. And it's hard for us to really know which things we just know in our hearts and which things we've been taught and which things that we've learned. But letting go of everything that we've learned is impossible. Because as humans, we have to hold on to these things. I have to know how to speak. Therefore, I can't unlearn the language that I've learned. And within that language are several emphasis and, semantics that I've learned within the words. And my paradigm has become the reality I know. And I know at this point I'm just mumbling, not mumbling, but rambling, I guess, because it's very difficult to pin this down to what to try to convey a message that each person has to see if the dogma that they have in their life is holding them back. So far, with all the research I've done through, religious studies and theosophy and occult and just history in general, various philosophies, you find out that there has never been anyone in history that had it all figured out. There have never been a group of people who had it all figured out to the point where everything worked seamlessly, flawlessly, to where their way of being was the proper way of being. And a person may take, for example, let's say a group of people who decided to wander off and have a commune and be peaceful. And all they wanted to do was escape, and everyone was happy, and then they got invaded, and they were killed off, let's say. A person might say, well, these people had it figured out, but it was external influences or other people that caused their demise, so it wasn't their fault. And I would say then it is their fault because they didn't protect themselves. And that's a long way of saying that I do understand why a country has to protect itself. I do understand why borders come up. I do understand why communities, stand together against other communities that they don't agree with, because we are trapped in our own dogmas. In this nation, in the USA, our dogma is nationalism. The idea that we should protect the U.S. at all costs, even if we don't feel like we have the proper freedoms or that it's going to the right place. I know that the forefathers had their own interests in mind, but do I think that everyone was out for freedom and just helping everyone else? Of course not, because they were just people. The image that we have of history is what the history books show us, and often that's skewed. But even when it's as accurate as possible, much of this is just handwritten or word of mouth. Even though oral traditions tend to be the best, we have a repeating system of valuing profit and money and gain over human life, and it was in direct opposition to communism in a way, and the idea that everyone should work and just take an equal share. And so we have capitalism and communism and socialism, they're all entwined so much, because the idea that a nation can be capitalist depends on that nation functioning as a group. To function as a group means that we have to take care of one another, which means that there will be socialist programs. So, to bring religion and politics into a video about dogma would be natural, because I think that that's the biggest problem that we have in the world right now. is dogma. The belief that we think that we're right and that everyone else is wrong. And letting go of that belief is crucial. If only a few people believe something, let's say a majority of people believe that all races should be free, and there are a small amount of people who, probably a large amount of people rather, who still support slavery and believe that someone of a different skin color is a lesser human being or not human at all. And we've always demeaned people by showing them as apes, not just with blacks. We've done it with Native Americans. We've done it with Greeks, with Irish, anybody, to make them look like a lesser being. Anyhow, there's groups that still probably believe that slavery should be upheld. So, in a dogmatic sense, to tie that in, what I'm trying to say is that a person may look and say, well, some people still believe this, so maybe there is some credence to it. And at a point, you just have to use your own mind and your own research, your own understanding, to try to gauge what's right and what's wrong, because there's nothing black and white. There's no good and evil. These are all human constructs manufactured out of this paradigm, this illusion that we call life. And it's the best that we have, and that's just it. It's not about dogma, but we do have to have values and morals. Morals and Dogma is actually a book by Albert Pike, who he was a Freemason. A lot of people hate him because he used Aleister Crowley type mentality of it's all about yourself, get your own, and that gets so misunderstood by people who think that people are just selfish. But it's really hard to convey the idea that you have to see your own reality first, you have to love yourself first, you have to understand yourself first before you can even remotely begin to understand the world around you. Because people are so different. And we base what we think society is on the similarities that we have. But those similarities are, I'm similar, I believe the same thing as this one friend of mine, but maybe we're completely different in our values about, stealing or whatever it might be. And this other friend, he may share certain values, but not the other ones. And so we congregate towards certain groups when we need that reassurance. But this is why having an echo chamber isn't a very good thing. And an echo chamber is going to Facebook to post your political views to people who share your political views, so you can say right on, high five, without sticking your neck out and saying what you believe. So I think we shouldn't be afraid to challenge what we believe and say what we mean all the time. I know friends on various chat groups and Facebook and whatnot who will post their political views or their views on religion or whatever it might be, and they'll post them within a private group, a closed group, but they'll never post it on their own page. They'll never say anything out in public. They would never dare be confrontational or bring anything up. And I say, why not? If you really believe this, it's one thing to believe something, but if you believe it so strongly that you feel you need to talk about it constantly, then why hide it from who you are? And in many of these cases, it would be, say, someone whose family is religious, and they don't want to say anything bad because then their family would look at them a certain way. And I say, but that's important. That's what's important. If you really stand behind something and you really believe it, you should put it out there and allow it to be pounded and torn down. Because if your temple's strong, if the foundation's strong, it will be upheld. And it's not about having people agree with you or disagree with you. It's about putting all your ideas out there so they can be analyzed. Because we've been hiding how we truly feel for too long. The PC culture was kind of the pinnacle of it. And now we're at a point where people are just saying everything they feel, which is surprising to some folks because they assume that all of a sudden now people are angry about this, or now people don't believe in this, now people are, this way or that way. We've always been this way. It's just that we were hiding it. And, after the recent election, now everybody's coming out of the woodwork saying exactly how they feel. And I see that as a good thing. It's opening up dialogue. We see that the media has been corrupt from the beginning. I've always known that. This is a good thing that the media is being attacked because they're full of shit. But at the same time, to look at it fairly, they're only telling people what they want to hear. Because it's all about ratings. And ratings come through people watching, and people watch what they want to see. Therefore, switch on something conservative if you're a liberal. Switch on something from a liberal station if you're a conservative. Listen to Christianity and Christian dialogue if you are atheist, and and look at it from the atheist point of view if you're a Christian. But try not to hang on to any one viewpoint. Just let it go. Ride the stream. You know, my friend and I were talking about the stream analogy, and I always hear about floating, just kind of don't resist the current because it'll just pull you. And I've always used these analogies of, you know, you're floating down the stream and you can paddle from side to side, but you can't really stop yourself from going forward. You can just try to avoid the rocks in the way. Sometimes you'll get stuck in an eddy or a whirlpool, but eventually you'll get back out. All these metaphors work, but a fishing line works perfectly. You are the fishing line, and you are in the creek. Anyway, enough metaphors and bullshit. My whole point here was just to say that it's really important, I believe, that we let go of what we think we believe. Anything that we can't prove doesn't do us much justice to try to convince others that it's true. But more than that, even the things that we can prove can be disputed. Even scientific studies which have been proven over and over, there will be people who will not believe that, for it conflicts with another one of their beliefs or dogmas. So, perhaps we can overcome this in future generations, or perhaps not. I really don't know. But for me, letting go is not a matter of saying, I just don't believe anything, or I don't care. It's a matter of saying, these are things I know for sure, as much as I can, but these are things that I just might want to be true, because if you have your hands full, you're not going to be able to hold something, you know. Yeah, I'm done. I can't go into any more metaphors, but you have to be open in order to receive. And that means you have to have your brain conditioned, your mind conditioned, your soul, your spirit, your essence conditioned to not have to resist, but to not have to go along with what everyone's telling you either. Be you, I guess. So, take care, everybody. Have a good one. Wish y'all